Thanks for joining me today. This is Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. A little late today, but we have some trouble finding the news. It's funny how we are so dependent on the mainstream media, even though we eschew the mainstream media on this station. But when I come back, I'll tell you about my morning here.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station and subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're moving up towards that $100,000 subscriber limit for the end of the year. We appreciate you being here. And it's so what happened this morning? I was looking around for news, and I even looked at some of my competitors, and I think you're not putting anything on there. It's worthwhile. Stop playing 10 minutes of CBC clips. We've got some exciting shows coming up next week. And I've got Anita Krishna is on the show with me Monday at 11, change in time because she's out in Vancouver. Anita is a fabulous journalist, fabulous woman who was actually fired for talking about the pandemic. We still can't say it. Oh, yes, it's a safe and yeah, the vaccine is safe and effective, as Jimmy Dore always likes to say. And we've also hoping to have Jimmy Dore on the show next week, or Jimmy Dore. And he's coming to Ottawa on June 1st. And I'd like to have him on the show to talk about his appearance here. I think the guy is just a marvelous addition to American journalism. He's not only funny, and he's one of the funniest people I've ever seen on television or on YouTube, but he's articulate about politics, and I can't wait to meet the guy because I'm a huge fan. So we hope to have him on. And Anita, of course, is a regular on Jimmy Dore's show, and so she's coming on my show on Monday to talk about what happened to her as a mainstream media journalist. And I've got all the time in the world for Anita, and I can't wait to have her on the show. So we're gonna talk about that. And like I say, Kyle Kemper is on Thursday. This, of course, the brother of Justin Trudeau will be on the show Thursday, and all we're going to talk about is Bitcoin and cyber currency, because he reached out to me and he said, do you know anything about it? And I said, no, I know very little about Bitcoin and cyber currency. And he says, why don't we do a show about it? And I said, you're welcome to come on the show anytime. This will be about his fourth or fifth appearance. And Kyle's a marvelous guest. I'd love to have him on. So Kyle will be on the show next Thursday, and we've agreed to that. And we'll get Jimmy Dore on next week as well. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's get to some of the news. Because like I said, I wasn't seeing a whole lot out there this morning. But you know what this reminds me of? We've got Stephen Guilbeault freelancing. He's out there, and I don't know if Mark Carney's actually sat down with his cabinet or his caucus and said, here's what I'm really about. Because if you're confused about who Mark Carney is, I'm confused too. Although I think I know what he's all about. It's all about power. It's all about the capital P power. He's not a conservative. He's not even a liberal. And I won't say what he is, but it starts with an F. Don't take that the wrong way. But Mark Carney is about power. I always tell you, I had a fabulous history teacher in high school. I had some great history professors in university, but the guy who I always went back to was named Roger Rajat. He was a fantastic history teacher and left of center. I think he probably voted Liberal or NDP. I don't know if he voted once Conservative, he told me. But he was a real true believer in free speech. And he told me one time, he said, you know what politics is all about? It's not about left or right, conservative or liberal. It's about power. And it's all of these ideologies are a veneer. And this is how people seek and obtain power, by using the veneer. Okay, so here's Guilbeault throwing cold water, and let's listen to Guilbeault. Freelancing. Now, I got to tell you this. Yeah, I always remind myself to get out of these things. But Guilbeault was freelancing here. And it's like one day, I think there was a National Post column about this today. I thought the same thing. One day after Carney appoints his cabinet, he's lost control of it. Totally lost control of it. Because he's got all of these people out there with their own agenda, including Stephen Guilbeault, who, do you think Carney's going to rein him in? No, I don't think so, because Carney secretly and passionately agrees with Stephen Guilbeault. He wants Stephen Guilbeault to say those things, but he wants to look like, okay, that's Guilbeault freelancing. I'm not going to officially endorse that. But let's listen to Guilbeault. It's incredible.
That she's still concerned that you're part of cabinet, and also the new selection of Mr. Buzyn for the environment minister. She says it's too close of a tie to you. What do you say in response to that?
I think we will have to agree to disagree with Premier Smith. We think that protecting the environment, fighting climate change is important. Lots of Canadians believe that as well. It was a central element of our platform, and we will make good on our commitments.
The Prime Minister last night on TV seemed to open the door to potentially changing the emissions cap or the IAA to get projects built. What do you think of what he said?
Well, these are important conversations that we will need to have in the coming weeks. I think we will have to agree to disagree with Premier Smith. I think we will have to agree to disagree with Premier Smith. We think that protecting the environment, fighting climate change is important. Lots of Canadians believe that as well. It was a central element of our platform, and we will make good on our commitments.
The Prime Minister last night on TV seemed to open the door to potentially changing.
No, it wasn't a central part of the platform. Mark Carney didn't talk about net zero. His reputation is all about net zero. His past participation in the Liberal government is all about net zero, but he didn't talk about net zero. Maybe once or twice in Ontario. When he was out in Alberta, it was, oh, I'm all for pipelines. So this man is a categorical liar.
The emissions cap or the IAA to get projects built. What do you think of what he said?
Well, these are important conversations that we will need to have in the coming weeks.
Premier Smith is saying that you're anti-pipeline still. What do you say in response to her concerns just broadly about the cabinet, and how do you deal with national unity? How do you address that right now?
So on pipelines, people should remember that we bought a pipeline, Trans Mountain, and that is only used right now about 40% capacity. So I think before we...
Why do you think it's 40% capacity, airhead? It's because you have limited the amount of natural resources, oil and gas, that Alberta can produce. So that's why it's operating at limited capacity. This man is beyond reason.
We start talking about building an entire new pipeline. Maybe we should maximize the use of existing infrastructure. And the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as the International Energy Agency, are telling us that probably by 2028, 2029, demand for oil will peak globally, and it will also peak in Canada.
Now, this is a lie, too. These people hold on to this as gospel, that the demand for oil is going to peak. Time now. You are so full of shit. It amazes me how you can go on camera and open your stupid mouth Sorry, I'm getting a little out of hand here.
So as far as I know, there are no investors right now. There are no companies that are saying that they want to build an east-west pipeline. And as you know, these things are built by companies, not governments.
Are you against the construction of pipelines in Canada? What I'm saying is that we already have an infrastructure in place that's not even at 50% capacity. So before we think about building new infrastructure, we should maximize the use of what already exists. And as I said to your colleague, the Canadian Energy Agency and the International Energy Agency. Yes, but the Prime Minister is saying, well, let's build pipelines, and you're pushing the brake on that. Well, what I'm saying is that the international and Canadian energy agencies are saying that demand for oil will peak by 2028, 2029, and there's no developer who's...
People are living in la-la land. Oh, there'll be no more demand for oil after 2028. And this guy, can you tell me what the hell a minister of Canadian identity and culture is? Why do we need a minister responsible for Canadian identity and culture, especially one this stupid? I cannot believe this guy has the gall to actually step in front of a microphone and try to describe what he's all about, because what he's all about is chaos. And it's incredible to me. Anyway,
interested in building an east-west pipeline at this time.
All right. No, they're not interested. Stephen Guilbeault is not interested in building an east-west pipeline at this time. Not at all. Because Stephen Guilbeault is a proud socialist. Do you detect some similarity here between Mark Carney and Stephen Guilbeault? What did Mark Carney say in his book Values? The two people he admires most, the two political leaders he admires most, are Karl Marx, a bloody communist, of course, the author of the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, and Vladimir Lenin, the Soviet leader who put his plans into action and began the incarceration of an entire country as a commie. That's who Mark Carney admires. So don't forget that, folks. Here, let's look at some more here. EV subsidies. We're not going to see a cent back from these EV subsidies. We have spent billions of dollars. $52 billion in e-subsidies. You think we're going to see this back? Or are they resubsidized? No, we're not going to see these back. It's money down the drain. Here it is. Honda's EV supply chain. North Volt Battery Factory in Quebec. PowerCo, Volkswagen Battery Plant, St. Thomas, Ontario. These are all in central Canada, aren't they? It's where that's where the Liberal government likes to spend their money, because they think they're going to get a return on it at election time. And they got a big return on it this time. But guess what, folks? These plants are never going to operate. It's got nothing to do with the tariffs. It's got everything to do with the fact that Canadians don't want to buy electric vehicles any more than Americans do. So here, and there's more of them. Excuse the glasses. Stellantis LG Battery Factory, Windsor, Lion Electric, Quebec, GM, Ingersoll, Ontario. More. Billions, $52 billion wasted. That's what Mark Carney is all about. And the Canadian media allowed him to get away with it. Now, what happened to the Labor minister? Interestingly enough, in this election, a lot of traditional NDP supporters voted Conservative because Pierre Poilievre was definitely in their camp in terms of having an affordable lifestyle. That's all I asked for. I wrote about it extensively about the hard hat vote. Just as Richard Nixon reached out in 1972, Pierre Poilievre was reaching out in this election. That's the reason the NDP have 7 seats. Not because the vote went to the Liberals. The vote went to the Conservatives. Because they were saying, hey, I believe in the free enterprise system. I just want it to be equitable. I just want to be able to have a job with a reasonable salary so I can feed my family and live in affordable housing. And Pierre Poilievre reached out to that. So what did Mark Carney do in this cabinet that he's created, which is out of control already, as I've said? Well, Mark Carney didn't appoint a labor minister. He's got something called a jobs and this and that and everything else minister. But he doesn't believe enough in labor to have a labor minister. I thought Mark Carney was a Marxist-Leninist. Well, he is. But that's exactly why he didn't appoint a labor minister, because Mark Carney doesn't believe in labor. He doesn't believe in people who have to do real jobs. He believes in controlling the system as a banker. And this is what you're going to see increasingly from this corrupt government in Ottawa. You're going to see people who really think they can govern without the consent of Parliament. Why do you think they're not having? Why do you think they're not having a budget? And I want to read this from Giovanni. With these local economic factors in mind, it is no surprise that many Canadians are concerned by Prime Minister Mark Carney's decision to exclude a Minister of Labour from the newly unveiled federal Liberal cabinet and relegate the Labour portfolio to a junior minister in government. Yeah, that's precisely it. Now, what do you think Mark Carney is up to here? Well, I could call it the capital F, and the more astute of you can guess what I'm talking about. I can't really make that identification here on YouTube, but you know what I'm talking about. Mark Carney is all about power. Mark Carney is all about taking control of your life. And if he has to have a chaotic cabinet, here, I'm going to read from my friend Tristan Hoffner's column in the National Post. During the federal election, Carney greenlit a record $70 billion without parliamentary approval. And now, even before the House of Commons has reconvened, his government has signaled its intention not to publish a budget. This is criminal. With both actions, the new Liberal government has neutered one of the reasons Canada has a parliament in the first place: to review and manage the disbursement of money. And once again, this is a column in the National Post written by my friend Tristan Hoffner. The direct control of national finance has been referred to as the great task of modern parliamentary government, reads the procedural guidebook given to all Canadian MPs. The text then reminds them that the House of Commons has been exclusive control. The House of Commons has exclusive control over the business of public finance. During his brief tenure, Carney has already used his executive authority to request 2 disbursements of money outside the federal government's usual spending channels. On April 1st, Carney was granted an order in council releasing $40.3 billion in emergency funds. The second, granted on May 2nd, was for $33.1 billion. See, we have executive orders in Canada as well. They're called orders in council. And this allows the government to conduct the business of government without parliamentary approval. So Parliament hasn't sat since December. Remember that? It was before Christmas. They never came back from the Christmas break. It's May now. I'm looking at the calendar. It's May 17th, and Parliament's still not back. That's because Carney wants to govern without consent of Parliament. And why do these ridings keep flipping? Why? Like, thank God I don't like the Bloc, but thank God the Bloc stood up and said, hey, we're going to contest that riding in Quebec that the Liberals won by 1 seat. Something stinks about this whole process right now. Something is really bad. And I was always an advocate of Elections Canada. I always said good things about it. We had the fairest, we had the safest, we had the most validated elections in the world. And I was very concerned that they were going to go to electronic voting in this last election. And I called Elections Canada and I said, no, we're going to continue to use paper ballots, which are the most honest way to do it, because you get into this electronic voting and it's ripe for abuse. But what the heck is going on right now with all of these recounts going on? I've never seen an election like this in my lifetime, where there's that many elections, that many constituencies that are being questioned. It's almost like they're knocking off one after another. I'm going to read a bit more of this. It has been more than 5 months since the federal government has actually approved funding the way it's supposed to be, via an itemized money bill that is approved in a vote by the House of Commons. The last one for $21.6 billion was passed on December 10th, when Carney's day job was still as an executive with Brookfield Asset Management. The December 10th appropriation bill details how much money is going to each federal agency, but it lacks any information about the government's wider fiscal policy. So that's the problem. We need a budget to understand where the government is going to take us. A budget is not just a routine piece of business. It's integral to what the federal government is all about, how they're going to expropriate your finances, your money, and spend them. But the Mark Carney government doesn't want to do that. They want a fiscal update. This is interesting. We said we're going to spend less so we can invest money. We said to Canadians where we're going to invest. A lot of that is out there. Philippe Champagne, the finance minister, told CBC. There have been periods in Canadian history where the country has gone more than a year without a federal budget, but there were always extenuating circumstances. Yeah, like the war, like the First World War and the Second World War. Yeah, those were extenuating circumstances. We're not at war with anybody right now. This is why Mark Carney pretended we were at war with the United States until he went down to suck up to Donald Trump. And that's exactly what he did. We're not at war with anybody right now. There's no war. But that's what Mark Carney wants to create, this climate where we are at war with the United States, except we're not when I'm face to face with Donald Trump. When I'm face to face with Donald Trump, I'll get on my knees and proclaim him to be a transformational president, even though you can't define what you mean by that. Yin and yang. This man is a classic failure as a leader. And we need a new election. And God help us, if this party gets 2 more seats, or if we get some NDP MPs defecting to the Liberals, because we'll be in for 4 years of economic catastrophe. And that's what Mark Carney is all about. I refer back to this column from Tristan Hopner. Upon news of Carney's no budget plans, Conservative MP Mike Lake noted that the Tories had a budget ready only 5 weeks after their victory in 2011. Very true. Election day was May 2nd, and the finance minister, Jim Flaherty, had a budget in front of the House of Commons by June the 6th. I remember that. I was working at the House of Commons at the time. Wrote Lake, It is entirely unacceptable for this new Carney Liberal government not to present a budget at this time of fiscal chaos caused by the previous Liberal government. And I thought we were in a crisis. Remember, all through the election campaign? Oh, it's a crisis. We're going through a huge crisis caused by Donald Trump. We're almost at war with the Americans. But Mark Carney now, there's no crisis. We don't need a budget. We'll just make it up as we go along. I tell you again, that's a form of government that denies the validity, the veracity, and the truth of the House of Commons. That ultimately, any government is supposed to be responsible to that House of Commons. That's what responsible government is all about. And if you went through elementary school or high school, you heard that term time and time again. That's what responsible government is all about. And this Carney government is already saying we're not responsible to the House of Commons. We're responsible to nobody but ourselves. We are headed for economic catastrophe and the loss of our democracy under this man. And I haven't called him what he really is. Starts with a D. And that's where we're headed. Believe me, we have got to do better. So that's why I say, continue to resolve to resist this Carney government, which I don't know why there were so many idiots in this country who decided Mark Carney was the savior of this of Canada. I can understand liberals thinking that. I can understand the Liberal Party thinking this was their only way out after the debacle, after the catastrophe of the Justin Trudeau years. But I don't know why so many Canadians decided to put their faith in this globalist, in this China first individual who is fighting hard to destroy this country. Canada strong? No. It's never been about Canada strong. It's been about China strong. It's about globalism strong. And that's what Mark Carney is all about. So thank you for watching today. And our numbers are good. Thank you. Thank you for being there. And I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock with more of the news you need to know. God bless this country and Godspeed to all of you. This has been David Krayden talking to you live from Ottawa.